So thank you very much for having me here. Before I begin, two or three quick points. First is that I have done, as I'm sure everybody on this conference has done, innumerable webinars in this COVID era. And at some point of time, you wonder whether these webinars are helping, whether we are learning anything from them. So just as a token activity, as soon as Sandeep said that wear your T-shirt, I realized that I don't have my own T-shirt, so I quickly ran out and wore a Bitcoin T-shirt at least, so everybody knows that I'm learning from what Sandeep is saying. Second, very quick point, and that will be the last before I start talking about it. Uh, Everybody who has been on this call more or less from the beginning heard a lot of dimensions of conversation and what Sandeep said, right from the token, how to go about it, how he did not jump to just money but establish his basic mainnet, etc. I think that if you begin with the approach that, hey, let me get the money, all those things will follow, neither will they follow, and frankly nor will you get the money. You have to think of all those things first, and money has to be a consequence. And I don't want this to be like a Hindi film dialogue, because there have been Hindi films right from the the Three Idiots, as well as another one about how money follows. I want to be very practical, so I'm going to cover, I think, 6 or 7 dimensions of this IEO journey. And because there are 6 or 7, I'll be spending just a minute and a half per each of them. Very happy to interact with the rest of the audience and bring up other points later. So first thing is that if your entire desire to do an IEO comes from the fact that it might be an easier way to raise money than, let us say, an ICO, or go further away than a crowdfunding, or go further away and do like an IPO itself. Like if your entire desire is this is where easy money comes in, regrettably you might be somewhat right. Okay, regrettably you might be somewhat right, but it will not, the joy of the IEO will not last for long. Because please understand, this is not money people are giving you to go and now buy your Mercedes or Lamborghini and do things. It is money for a project which you have taken with a very responsible commitment to those people, right? So I'll not talk about all forms of capital formation. We'll try to restrict it to IEO. So first keep that in mind, that this is not money that people are gifting you. I know it sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, but when I see so many people who approach me and say, we are making a white paper, we are coming up with ICO, IEO, etc., I find that their entire thought is only raise money, raise money. There's nothing of substance, which is a tragedy. And by the way, it will end also in a tragedy. Second thing to keep in mind is the fact that, and I'm surprised to not see a large number of questions on the live chat, which should have been there, around the regulatory aspect of, what is a token? Where can it be issued? Can a private limited company in India issue a IEO? All of those complexities. I think that those complexities are not something that should deter you, but at the same time, they are necessary evils. There are rules of the game. You have to follow those rules, right? So an IEO, Sandeep was talking about the utility of it and it's something of security or not. These are very important points, which, by the way, even if you have a successful IEO, will later come and bite you if not enough thought has gone into them. That is the second thought to keep in mind. The third is trying to understand that basically what you're saying is that, any sale process is, I will give you this, you will give me money, right? So what is it that you're giving people, and the fact that they're giving you money in return, if your focus is entirely on the marketing of it. For example, if you go to the oldest ICOs, the entire effort and money by the issuer in some cases was spending on making a brilliant white paper and doing a fantastic social media and advertising campaign. And frankly, that was the extent of the project. And some of these projects raised lots of monies, which have now evaporated, right? In fact, the reason Bitcoin, as well as other tokens who frankly may not ever have an issuance, also get a bad name, is because some of these bad issuers that came our way and led to the entire ecosystem getting a bad name, right? So if the effort, I would say 90+% of your effort has to be on your project. As in, assume you got your money, or you're going to get your money. What are you going to do with it next? You're going to create a solution of some kind. You're going to create adoption. Not solution without adoption is an absolute zero, which means you have the greatest mousetrap, but nobody is buying the mousetrap or using your mousetrap. It is zero. So that means you have to create a solution. You have to have at least a path to adoption. You have to, in this world, in the crypto world, necessarily have partnerships in place. So you have to have had at least those initial discussions. Ideally, you should have the partnerships in place, but you have to think about how you fit into the entire space. Fourth, what you need to know, and I say this with some regret, is that the largest use case, by largest I mean the most prevalent and most widespread use case of the entire crypto sphere today has become speculation, which means a lot of people might participate in a token issuance, whether IEO, ICO, or whatever, without bothering about anything except that, if I buy it for X, there's a very good chance that on the day one itself or shortly thereafter, it will be at 1.5x or 2x or even 10x. That is the sort of desire, and I don't care about anything else. Now, what tends to happen is that because there is a speculative use case which is so prevalent, a lot of people might say, forget all those other things that you're talking about. All I need to do is showcase myself well. This is where I want to give a very serious warning to everybody. The world of crypto, more specifically capital formations, token economics, and more specifically IEOs, which are one of the latest kids on the block, probably only rivaled with STOs in terms of being latest in how many IEOs have happened. Probably STOs are far fewer. Uh, Anything that you read about an ICO that happened in 2017 or 2018 is completely invalid today. So don't try to learn from examples which are already gone, done, dusted with, and are never going to come again. Today the world is different, which means while I don't know, I'm just speculating here, maybe 95% of the people who will subscribe to your IEO might be doing only with speculative intent. Okay, I'm not denying that. I don't know what the real number is. It could be 50, it could be 99. So let's say a very large proportion of them is, but the remaining, the 1%, the 5%, or whatever there are, the remaining are very heavily influential on whether your IEO will succeed or not. Please keep that in mind. So numerically, more people might be speculating, but the few people who actually go through the trouble of reading your documentation, whether it's a prospectus, information memorandum, white paper, whatever name that is given to these documentation, the people who actually read it and study it and then put out information or their understanding on social media or on other websites, I think that they can make or break your IEO. So it is not about how many people you can convince, it is about how many influential people you can convince. And by influential, I don't mean influencer marketing as in social media, but people who are genuinely have a track record. Now I'll just take a little diversion, and there are two more points that I need to cover at a very superficial level, is about what is the alternative to IEO. So first, please consider the biggest and most common alternative to IEO, which is nothing. As in, go ahead and do your project without the IEO or any other form of fundraising. If this can be done, I must tell you that is the most important and interesting way to do it. The only case in which you should say, I will raise other people's money, is because you could not do it without other people's money. Now, what is the alternative to IEO where you have to raise people's money? I think that going to a bunch of friends, colleagues, high net worth individuals, relatives can easily give you a few lakh rupees, going all the way up to 25, 50, 70, those kind of numbers. Lakh rupees, such as 100,000 USD equivalent, I think can be raised from people who are within your network. And frankly, any entrepreneur who first goes and raises money from their personal network, goes to one's father, father-in-law, brother, sister, friend, school teacher, etc., former employer, I must tell you, I'm 50% sold right there. That if all these people who know this guy for some time have put money behind this guy, then certainly that's a huge evaluation of the person. It may not be an evaluation of the project, but at least now I feel, unlikely that he's going to run away with the father's money and the father-in-law's money and the friend, employer, teacher, who have you. So I think that first try to see if that much money is enough, at least to take your project up to some point. And I must say, I was not aware of this part of Sandeep's journey, but this actually is something that I deeply appreciate about what Sandeep did, that don't just try to go and tell people with some sort of a white paper that give me money. Go to people who believe in you, trust you, and that, by the way, brings in a lot of confidence. So I have often thought about, if I were to invest and all other things being equal, would I invest as an angel investor? Would I invest in an ICO, or would I invest in an IEO? Very simply, of all of these, my preference would be to invest as an angel investor, because as an angel investor, you get in touch with the entrepreneur directly. You don't just deal with them on online platforms. You visit them, you talk to them, you talk to their team. So do a very deep dive. However, because this is a global platform, you cannot always angel invest unless you're just blindly following another angel investor. So we move to IEO versus ICO. And to be honest, depending on which side of the bed I get up from on that day, I change my mind about which I would like to do. Having said that, usually I am in today's scenario, happy with the IEO platform, because in addition to placing my bets on the founder and their project, I derive some comfort from the fact that an exchange has actually done some level of diligence. I think that I wish it were much more, but at least some level of diligence, because if their IEO, after IEO starts failing, for instance, and IEOs will fail, startups will fail, projects will fail, no problem. But if they largely are only dealing with failed IEOs, soon their business of IEO and maybe their business of an exchange also could fail. So they will put in some effort, at least, in trying to qualify. So I derive some comfort from the fact, and the fact that you now have a guaranteed listing, for which people have had to put in a lot of effort in the past, including paying significant amount of fees. In fact, at one point of time, listing a token on an exchange started scheming like the biggest scam there is. And CZ of Binance also said that if we take any listing fee, we are going to give it away in donation. And it had become a big issue at that point of time. In fact, the biggest business could be to set up 100 exchanges solely for the purpose of listing tokens and charging a small listing fee. I don't know. Then the token issuer could say that I'm listed on 100 exchanges, but that's obviously not of consequence. But I think that if I look at some of the 4 or 5 very strong exchanges today who are promoting IEOs, I do derive some comfort, because they have now become, somewhat as in reassuring, responsible institutions, which I want to associate with.